Hello everyone and welcome in today's webinar. My name is Gzim and I am the account manager for security portfolio at PCB, also the organizer of this webinar. As you are already informed, we organize weekly webinars in regular basis covering different topics and areas. In this webinar, we will hear about the ISO TS 22380, a new ISO technical specification on supply chain continuity management. This session will be hosted by PCB partner Dr. Wolfgang Mahr, who is the Managing Director of Governance and Continuity GmbH with more than 20 years of experience. I hope this webinar will help you understand the major points of this topic and the importance of the standard. In order, if you have any question, you can write them in question box in the right-hand control panel, or you can use the option to raise your hand and we will answer to all of your questions. Okay, Wolfgang, you can continue now.
Thank you, Tim. This is Wolfgang Mahr. Thanks for the nice introduction. Good morning, good day, good afternoon, good night, wherever you are on the globe. We're about 20 specialists on supply chain continuity attending this webinar. I'm proud and honored to tell you about a new, maybe it's even the latest, the newest standard produced by ISO Technical Committee 292. It's one of the standards in the series concerning business continuity, where we started back in 2012 with releasing the 22301 standard, the base standard, and over the last 3 years there have been developments on special standards for certain aspects of business continuity. And one of them is 22318, highlighting the issues we have in business continuity which are related to supply chain continuity. I will explain that a bit later, but just as a short message, supply chain continuity is the aspects covering you and your suppliers. So it's not internal issues, but something which you might not control, because the problems and the solutions are not in your organization, but somewhere else on the globe. Okay, so it's for that reason it's quite important to deal with these external issues as well. So let us go briefly through the contents. So we'll discuss what is supply chain continuity, the publication status, it's already published, and then a positioning of SCCM, which is the acronym for Supply Chain Continuity Management, SCCM, it's a bit shorter, in the BCM and DCMS Lifecycle. I hope it's not too technical and too theoretical. Then we talk about the context, the relationship with other standards in this area. We have to underline again how SCC or SCCM supports BCM goals. It's a boilerplate text actually, it's not specific to SCC. Then we will look at the structure of the standard itself, and the last 5 or 6 bullet points are actually headlines of the standard: the importance, analysis of supply chain, strategies which we can adopt, then issues on how to manage actual disruptions, and finally having a look at supplier performance evaluations, and finally, as a wrap-up, critical success factors. So as we talk about supply chain continuity, again, SCCM is the acronym. Why is it so important? I tried to talk about that in the introduction, but again, we need to highlight the importance of the supply chain. nobody is living on an island and is completely self-reliant and self-sufficient. We all are in the framework of an economy. We buy goods and services, we add value, and we sell goods and services. So on the supply side, we certainly are depending on our supply chain, and as we'll find out in a minute, if we are critically depending on one or only a few suppliers, then we certainly have to have a look at the relationship to find out if we can live with any interruptions these suppliers might pose for us. One example is the national critical infrastructure. That's not more and not less than the national infrastructure in electricity, in telecommunications, rail services, road services, air services, the supply of critical goods, the supply of people in cities, in agglomerations of cities, how to bring those people from work and to work. So if I am a manufacturer located close to a large city and my staff travels to and from this city to my site, or vice versa, then I'm relying, for example, on the rail or the subway infrastructure, and if it doesn't work, then my supply chain is affected and my production is affected as well. On top of that, we face multi-tier or hierarchical relationships. So the supplier himself is relying on their suppliers, on his suppliers as well. It's sometimes 2 levels up and 2 or 3 levels away from me. I see my supplier, but this supplier actually is depending on their suppliers, and so on and so on. So theoretically, if I really want to sleep well in business continuity terms, then I should go to the last or the first supplier in the chain. As these suppliers are not under my organizational command, like an internal department, I do have a problem to handle this third party. I might have a contract with this partner, a service level agreement, but if it's really a critical situation, then maybe the letters and the spirit of this agreement will let me in the rain, or will give the supplier an excuse not to deliver. So I really have to rely on them, and as we see later down the road, I should actually inspect what the business continuity arrangements, business continuity approaches are for my supplier. So I have to look at an external body, external organization for my BCM purposes. And as I said, that's a classical example. These dependencies are sometimes hardly visible, in that we take for granted that there is electricity, or that the rail network runs, or that the delivery truck arrives every Tuesday with fresh parts. If we are not living in a country in turmoil, or in a situation where these resources are not very reliable, then we sometimes forget about how dependent we are. But if we want to do our BCM homework well, we have to look at them and inquire or challenge each and everything. I often cite the example of a large insurance company in Switzerland, which has found out that if in their national head office there would be no water for more than 2 hours or so, then they have to send everyone home. So an invisible, normally available resource like water for humans and for machines is not available, then they are in a deep crisis. So be aware of things which might be hidden and which are not completely obvious. Okay. Well, just a short look at the official ISO site. It has been published. So if you, for example, look at if you look up on certain standards, on the top left corner we see 22318. We can search for this number and we see the statuses as published and development or withdrawn. So if we check published, then we find the confirmation it has been published mid of September. So it's valid and it's in force and can and should be used. If I say in force, just a short remark on ISO standards. ISO standards are not mandatory, so nobody forces you to adopt these standards. I mean, no government agency, unless it's a law which precedes standards. But if there's not a law to use these kind of standards, then it's up to you. But of course, it's a good practice to follow standards in the international standards in order to be recognized as a progressive and compliant business partner. If we have a look at the so-called BCM Lifecycle, BCM is, as most of you know, is not a one-shot affair where we do BCM, let's say, for a couple of weeks, a couple of months, and then we put everything into a drawer, and that was the end of the project. No, BCM is, of course, a circular process which in the long run should follow and support the business, the organization, and the business strategy. So we start with at 12 o'clock position with an analysis phase, the so-called business impact analysis phase. Then we move on at the 3 o'clock position to develop one or more strategies. If we ever experience an event which needs to be addressed by crisis management teams or invocation of special responses, then we are talking about handling events. We have to implement something to be capable to do so, and even if there are no events to tackle, we have to go through a validation phase where tests and exercises have to be done to be ready for the real thing. The high level or the best possible maturity level is actually embedding business continuity in the hearts and minds of management, division leaders, head of departments, and ideally up to the last staff member. But let us just have a look. In the BI phase, of course, we have to identify which suppliers we are depending on. So that's the phase, the detection phase, the exploration phase, where we find out, oh yes, we are depending on this and that supplier for this and this reason. We also find out how long an interruption of delivery by this supplier might be. We can survive 1 day, but not 1 week, or something like that. If we have found these weak spots or these pressure points, then we have to in the design phase, address a strategy, a SCCM strategy, if you like, how to deal with this situation, what is the answer to what we found in the analysis phase. And if we really are experiencing a serious event, a crisis, of course, everything which we have prepared here in the strategy phase has to be deployed, and we have to switch suppliers or work from stock, whatever strategy we have decided to implement. So that's when the strategy actually is put to reality. Again, at 9 o'clock position, tests and exercises if we want to prepare for business interruptions, including or affecting or being affected by supply chain interruptions, then we have to incorporate our suppliers, or critical suppliers, in the tests and exercises to play through these events and find out if our strategy, which we have created some time ago, actually will support us. Of course, maybe an example for embedding SCCM, if we recruit, if we conclude a contract with a new supplier, we should, right in the phase of these contract negotiations, ask them what their business continuity approach would be, what have they done to be a robust and resilient supplier for us. So, as a matter of fact, it's just not retrofitting and asking during a contract duration with a supplier, what have you done? How would you be prepared for a business interruption? But we should rather start right at the beginning, probably as part of the bidding process. How much are you prepared? What can you show us on how well you are prepared with your business interruptions? Okay, if we have a look at the higher level DCMS lifecycle, a lifecycle of implementing a so-called business continuity management system, I cannot go into details right now. Again, we see parts of these activities where supply chain continuity comes into play. If we start with the requirements for our business continuity, we will see that suppliers play a crucial role. Suppliers are, as I said, part of the equation, part of our offering. And also, maybe as a second example, continual improvement of the DCMS. If we have treated our soft spots with the suppliers in the past, this does not mean that we can lean back and nothing is going to happen, because the customer expectations might change, our organization may change, our business processes may change, suppliers may change. So we need to address the questions of supply chain management, at least in the continual improvement phase of this business continuity management system. Of course, we can say it's part of interest that parties manage business continuity, monitoring and review, but I think these are the main points. We start at the beginning, and we at least should have a look at our supplier dependencies when doing concrete steps for continual improvement. As I explained earlier, these standards are being developed or have been developed by an ISO technical committee, a group of international experts where I'm honored and proud to be a member of. We're about a team of, let's say, 25 persons from maybe 15, 20 countries. And we developed this first international standard ISO 22301, the DCMS specification, Business Continuity Management System certification. Yes, between 2010 and 2012. It was published in May 2012, together with a guidance document 22313, which explains how a business continuity management system might be implemented, where the specification tells us what exactly are the minimum requirements. This is a list of items, a kind of checklist which you have to go through and yes, theoretically answer every question with yes, undermined by evidence in order to become certified against the specification. If I say certified, then it's an association, an organization, a company, but not a person. So it's for organizations. We have then, as a TC, developed another standard 22317, specializing or focusing on business impact analysis. We had a webinar here a couple of weeks ago. If you're interested, you can call up the recording if you like. And one of these family members of guidance documents is the standard we are talking about today, 22318, for supply chain continuity. And I guess there will be other standards in this range of auxiliary documents to shed more light on different corners of the DCM lifecycle. SCC is in place to support the common, or let's say standard DCM goals, like protecting company value and reputation. These 5 bullet points are more or less standard. It's they are not specific for supply chain continuity, but if we ask the question, for example, if you do not take into account our suppliers, probably then our company value and reputation might suffer. Our customers just see that we are not delivering, and they couldn't care less why. Because maybe electricity supply has broken down, or if a truck hasn't arrived with critical spare parts. They are our customers, and they expect from us that we deliver, and we deliver within a time frame which has been decided to be within the BCN goals. If we go to the second point, if we do not have anything to address the crisis and just tell our customers, well, we don't get the spare parts, we cannot ship our goods, then we certainly may even risk the future of our company, because the customers might turn to our competitors and never come back. On the other hand, if we are well prepared, and this includes SCC, then our management certainly can demonstrate a commitment and support shareholder value. Maybe if we are certified against the standard, which includes, of course, having taken into account supply chain continuity, we may increase shareholder value, or we may improve our competitiveness if we can show that we have a very well designed and properly working business continuity approach, including our suppliers. And our competition cannot, then we're certainly in a position to be more attractive for our customers. It may even become worse if we are not able to deal with the incident. We may, as an organization, really risk the survival, risk the non-survival of the company, as there might be other problems with cash management, with customer loyalty, with inability to pay our staff and things like that. So again, if we're depending, and most of us are, on external suppliers, then this is another reason to get in touch with them and to deal with them. And finally, last but not least, financial losses should and can be managed and minimized by being properly prepared, so that if we look at the image of our company, even if something happens or happened, will flow like this mountain river. Okay, some technical data of the standard itself. I think we have actually spoken about it. It was developed by DC 292 of ISO International Standards Organization. In parentheses, the work started back when the company had another numbering, 223, but this is history. It was published, and it's a member of the family of 22301, 13, and 00 standards. We spoke about the 01, the 13. These are the business continuity management system standards. And 22300 is just a glossary to address definition of terms for this range of standards. As everyone can see and download from the ISO.org website, the focus of this standard is on importance of the supply chain. We already spoke about it. How to analyze the supply chain, give some approaches for strategies, how to deal with these kind of problems, also how to deal and how to manage disruptions, and addresses the issue of supplier performance evaluation. By the way, if you want to have a look on what a standard is all about and what details are, you may look it up as long as you know the number at the website of ISO.org. And with a number of standards, you can even have a look at the table of contents and the main drawings. So while these standards are not free of charge and copyright protected, ISO has decided to allow browsing of these standards in terms of a table of contents. Okay, I see there are some questions. We will try to come back to the questions at the end. Thanks for your patience. Okay, so what about the importance of the supply chain continuity? Well, underlining again, it has to be analyzed during the BI and on an ongoing basis. So the BI, business impact analysis, is the first prescribed waypoint where you have to have a look at your suppliers. The impact analysis actually is done, typically done on an interview, as an interview base with structured interviews, and those key people you are going to interview during this analysis phase should give you an answer on what suppliers they are depending on. For the obvious suppliers, this is not a problem. They know exactly, yes, we know this transportation company comes regularly, and yes, we are depending on this software maintenance crew, whatever, external, internal. But the real challenge actually is to be aware of those hidden and non-obvious dependencies. This needs a bit of questioning in terms of cross-examination or asking funny or silly questions to trigger the minds of the memories of these people, so that they remember, oh yes, if I imagine that we don't have these products for that and that period, then we might run into trouble. I mean, for products which are visible, which are touchable, it's fine, but for things which are hidden or not obvious, like the example of water in an office building, we have to try to excite the memories and find out on what else do the process depend. Another important aspect is pseudo redundancies. I may have a contract with 2 telecom providers or 2 electricity providers, and I think it's fine if one breaks down, then the other will take over. But if one of them is depending on the other, for example, if I have a main telecom provider and a backup telecom provider, but the backup telecom provider uses the same physical connections into my building or into my campus, then I'm not spared by physical interruption of this connection. So the challenge is actually to find out how and if are my suppliers depending on each other. And the trick or the solution must then be to reduce these dependencies. The standard also asks to analyze in depth the supply chain, and here is an example why it's really called supply chain, because if you imagine our organization in the bottom right hand corner, okay, we see our supplier on tier 1, but more often than not, this tier 1 supplier depends on 1 or several tier 2 suppliers, and so on and so on. So our organization just has a contract with a tier 1 supplier, but unless we analyze the organization and dependencies of our tier 1 supplier, we have no idea what's happening behind or in front of them. So it's important that we may not always succeed, but we try to have an overview of the whole supply chain, or at least to a depth where we would not find any critical suppliers anymore. For example, if tier 3 is a national electricity grid, okay, we cannot do something about it. We cannot take electricity from a neighboring country, but we have to live with this tier 3 supplier and do the best of it. Okay, so we have to determine the relevance of the suppliers. Again, a typical enterprise has probably many suppliers, although they're trying to reduce the number, but if you ask purchasing, they say we have got too many. However, we need to focus on relevant and critical suppliers. If these suppliers supply products and services which can be interchanged at a short notice, then we do not need to care about them, but we should focus on those critical ones where it's not easy or it's not possible to switch at short notice. Again, this is a point to be addressed in the BIA, and it just says that we have to identify these challenges when dealing with supply chain continuity management. So we also have to weigh different options and weigh different suppliers. As with other aspects in business continuity, we cannot probably obtain a 100 or 110% protection right from the beginning, but it's a process which needs to improve, and which will probably improve over time in order to enhance the protection resilience. If you are new to BCM, or if you just implement such a protection scheme, you will realize that with the first approach, the first round, the first iteration, the approach will not be completely satisfying, but you have to concentrate on the most important parts, maybe even settle with a partial protection, but going to all the depths and lengths of the protection process just takes time. There is no question about that, and the same holds true for this aspect of supply chain continuity. If you have realized, okay, we have a problem with this or these suppliers, then we have to deal with it. Maybe we can apply standardized risk management methods to identify potential impacts and probabilities and costs for the strategies. Every strategy except the first one, do nothing, will cost something in terms of financial and human resources. So unless we decide to do nothing, we have to get up and invest resources. The main issue probably is to reduce the dependency. As I said, if we've got more than one supplier, if we've got more than one resource for this critical business process, we can probably switch. And maybe with some contracts or with putting enhancing stock levels, we may create a strategy which reduces dependency. So maybe it needs a redesign of parts which we are producing, redesign processes. Maybe we use software, not specialized software. Maybe we use standard spare parts, standard oils, or standard screws in order to reduce the dependency. So it may also, if we are in manufacturing, if we are creating products, maybe a redesign of our finished product is important. Then, as an example, we may use the principle of insourcing. So we do not trust our suppliers, or if the critical supplier is not willing to help us, or does not give us a good feeling or an assurance that his operation is stable, then we might need to decide that we are going to produce the parts which we buy from him by ourselves, and reduce this or eliminate this dependency. Maybe we can also approach another supplier which is more capable and more willing to cooperate with us, which gives us a better feeling or a higher assurance. So we might decide to terminate this relationship and continue with another supplier. If it's not possible, or if it's worthwhile to stay with a supplier, and if he is ready to have us look in their internal BC approach, and we get the assurance that we're happy with this approach, then we can stay with the supplier. And of course, this is certainly in a situation which benefits both parties. He will be more stable, and we will get the assurance that we will not be let down when our supplier has a problem. If nothing else happens or works, then we might also simply decide to terminate the relationship, maybe redesign our processes or products, or do insourcing, or if this is not possible, then just find another way, a workaround to address the situation. I think it's better knowing that we are working on an approach by deciding to terminate this relationship instead of putting the head in the sand and just hoping for the best. If we are hit by a disruption, then there are a couple of things that highlight. We need to be prepared, of course. We started back with the BI in the analysis phase. We set up strategies. We involved suppliers in our exercises, which gives us a certain advantage to manage the crisis, but this is probably not enough. Typically, we have to find out if something is brewing up and something is going on. So we need early detection. If nobody tells us, or we do not find out that the supplier has a problem, then we will lose precious time, and this will cost us response time. It will cost us money and reputation. So if we can detect as early as possible that something is not working, then it's fine. With electricity, we'll probably sense it immediately, but again, this might be too late. So if maybe in an ideal situation, we are in contact with the electricity supplier, and they may set up an early warning system that something is going on in the electricity network, and they can warn us that maybe we have to shut down electricity in the next 50 minutes. Then we can work with it and live with it and make the best of it without slowly encroaching situations. It certainly pays off to detect early and not just be awakened or shocked when we find out, well, it actually has happened, the big thing has happened, and we have to deal with it. So this goes hand in hand with incident handling, detection and monitoring, communication. If we already have a strategy, for example, to switch suppliers, then we should go this route and call up the alternate supplier that we need this pieces and parts from them. Hopefully, then steering clear of the crisis. And finally, after having reached a new normal phase, maybe we stay with the alternate supplier or we go back to the original supplier. I think it makes sense, and it's also underlined by this standard, to do an analysis of lessons learned to be better prepared for the next time, and to maybe avoid the situation at all because of maybe not early detecting, or maybe the switch didn't work as planned. So all these nitty-gritty things which could have been better should be avoided the next time. Finally, maybe the high level or the ultimate goal is monitoring supplier performance. So we have to focus on critical suppliers. We cannot track and trace and evaluate our 517 suppliers, but the handful which are really critical. And this has to be done on an ongoing basis. As I try to underline all the time, we have to go on, we have to follow the development of the organization. So what's okay today maybe is not relevant in 6 months from now. And certainly when there are new versions of BI, when the analysis has to be repeated, all the suppliers have to be checked again. Again, also part of the evaluation is letting them participate in exercises and tests and see how they deal with the situation. And finally, putting in place some kind of monitoring and review to underline the principle of continual improvement. If something is okay today, it's maybe not enough tomorrow or in a year from now. Okay. As a resume, as a wrap up of what are the recommendations, what are the critical success factors. Certainly follow best practices, for example, the BCI's good practice guidelines, which are overlapping the contents of the ISO standards, the 01, the 13, and in this case the 18 standard. So if you consult these documents, take the 22301 as the must, and the other documents as a how-to document. You should cover a lot of terrain. As always, top management commitment. These are strategic questions, and as all these answers, strategies probably cost money and resources and manpower. Top management has to be involved. Maybe even that's the first line, not the second line. But anyway, we certainly should support this approach by applying project management methodologies. By all means, use what you have or pick a standard methodology, either from ISO or other organizations specializing on project management. We certainly also have to work in line with the company's structure and philosophy and ways of thinking. If we create something which is not accepted, which is not understood by key players in the company, this will not work. So play it by the ear and take advice from the affected parties and cooperate with them, support them. And finally, I said, try to drill down to the ultimate supplier to get the whole picture. Probably it's not possible in all the cases, and probably it's not realistically feasible, but at least we should try to get the ultimate impression of where all these suppliers, or what the ultimate ultimate level of suppliers is, to build a sensible strategy on top of that. Okay, that was it from my side. It just went through all the slides. I think we have a couple of minutes time. That does not work. So it's the question phase. Here we go. So I'm looking at my screen there. How many questions have we got? I don't see any questions. Tim? Hello?
Hello, Wolfgang.
Okay, here we are.
Okay, now it's time.
Yeah.
Now it's
Any?
time for a question, and we have a few people who has raised their hand to make a question. We will give them a chance. And the first one is Mr. Odobut, and we will give him a chance to make his question. You can continue now, Mr.
Okay.
Mr. Odobut? I think he is not active anymore.
The connection is gone. Okay.
We had another one, but she cannot make a question because it doesn't have an active microphone. But we have a few other questions here. If you can answer to them, we have one of them, which is, can we apply any other framework except BDCA? It says. I mean, if
yes, I think there are several related frameworks. PDCA is just the framework used by ISO, but I think it was not, I'm sure it was not created by ISO, but has been brought into this world of management system standards by the expert who did created the first management system standards. Yes, you can certainly do it if you go just for supply chain continuity management. Certainly yes. If you want to go for a certification against 22301, the main standard, you should probably work with something which is very close to PDCA. My recommendation is to check your framework with what is prescribed in the requirements standard, in the 01 standard. If your approach is similar, I think there's no big deal. Standard actually calls for certain actions and groups them in the PDCA, Plan to Check Act phases. But as long as you fulfill the paragraphs of the standard, then you can use any framework. Yeah.
Okay. The second question is: do we have to apply any pre-assessment evaluation before implementing the standard?
Are you talking about the 1.8 standard?
Yeah, I think it's talking for the
22318?
Yeah, it's talking for this standard.
My recommendation is that you base everything on the 01 standard. If you just do the 1.8, then you are just somewhere in the air. And I think your main vehicle or main yardstick is the 01. And the 01 tells you, okay, you have to do supply chain management. Maybe it's just 2 or 3 lines. And with the 1.8, you get a guidance on how to do it. So if I understand your question correctly, then if you want to do the 1.8, you shouldn't do it in mid-air, but in conjunction in the context of the 01, which tells you how to prepare a DCMS approach at all, you know. If you just look at the 22318 and do what's prescribed there, then it's like creating the 4th floor of the building without doing the other floors and the foundation. Okay?
Yes, okay. Okay, Wolfgang. There is no more question. Okay, thank you again, Wolfgang, for this highly informative presentation.
My pleasure, yes.
I believe the attendees had the chance to learn something new today, and I suggest you to take time and see our future webinar that we will be hosting. Next Wednesday, we will host a webinar topic which is called ISO 22301, Critical Steps Designing an Effective Business Continuity Management Plan. Again, thank you to all of you who spent time to listen to this webinar, and thank you to Wolfgang again.
My pleasure. See you soon at another webinar. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye.